Welcome to the teamx podcast powered by Rosenthal Coaching. Today we will discuss how remote work has permanently changed team dynamics.
Hello, I'm Steluța Leo.
I'm Gabriel Trandafirescu.
We are professional coaches working with leaders and their teams to unleash their superpowers and maximize results. If you're new to our podcast and channel, make sure to follow us and to get notified when we go live every Wednesday starting 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Gabe, what is this thing with remote work modifying team dynamics?
Luca, this remote work thing is very, very interesting because it's one example of how great disruptions, which we can't predict sometimes, and we can only adapt as human beings and as a race. Actually, like the last pandemic, changed a lot of stuff in the working environment as well, and in the business area. And even though remote work has been around for, I would say, few decades at least, as a very, very exception to the rule, right? Because everybody was normally working in the same geographical area, and everybody was coming to the office every day, and so on. But the proportion of people who started to work remotely during and still working remotely in the pandemic, I think, increased several times. Like I read some studies that says up to 30%, even 50% in some cases of total workforce in a company work exclusively remotely. So this is a big change compared to just 2 years ago, right? When before pre-pandemic. So I would say a lot of stuff changed, and the first thing that changed is the team energy and how the energy is distributed into these distributed teams, actually.
Yeah, I think this is one of the main topics that we wanted to cover, right? How has the team energy changed in the context of distributed teams? The other two topics are what's replacing the water cooler moments, and this is so awesome. I would love to. I love the fact that we discuss about that, and how are the different types of communication impacting efficiency? Now, you mentioned that working remotely has been around for a long time, but it hasn't been that common. And the fact that these days the percentage increased so much, it is very true. What has been around, and I can tell you that I worked for organizations that have that, was distributed teams, right? So especially for people working in big organizations, we had distributed teams, people working in various geographic areas, and this has been around for quite a while. And that was at the time, even at the time, it was a challenge to create connections between people, to create the bonds necessary for us to move forward as a team towards a common goal, which was, the high performance of our team. But at the time, we had at least the capacity to meet in person from time to time, and this helped the team's cohesion and the underlying energies of this team to manifest in what we were calling a normal way. It took us a bit of a longer time, but we still had this ability at that time, from time to time, to meet in person. So returning to the energy of the teams, right? How do we deal with this change, and how do we deal with creating the proper environment and creating working with a team so that the energy between the team members, the energy that runs between the team members, is beneficial and helps the team move towards the common goal, which is achieving high performance for any team, right? Because that's the purpose of any team, to achieve their goals and be high performing.
Yes, that's right. And it's very good that you brought in the subtle, I would say, difference between distributed teams in the past and remote work as a general accepted rule right now in the present. So I would start with that because it's very connected to the energy, to the question that you just put out there. So in the past, the distributed team that you mentioned were working remotely, not by choice, but because the team was distributed on a multiple country or even continent due to their specific structure, right? So it was something that was done from the top down, and this is it. This is how it is. You need to work, right? And it was, as you mentioned, quite difficult, even though you had the opportunity to meet from time to time, but it's still quite difficult. Whereas now people are choosing to work remotely and they are allowed to choose to work remotely by the leadership. So even people who are on the same team in the same city can work remotely and don't meet at the office. So it's a very different setup. And the energy that you mentioned, it's also different because when the whole team is in the same room, we are used to that energy. We are like people have been working like that forever, right? We are used to bringing in the energy into the room, and there's also that saying that you feel the energy in the room, right? So everybody's bringing in their energy, and there is a collective type of energy cocktail, I would say, that the team has together. And it's always the same, right? When the teams are getting into the room and they start the day or they have a team meeting, do you feel like familiar uh, with your teammates? And it's a different, it's a energy that we are used to. Whereas where we work remotely, you cannot actually bring physically that energy. And because we are used to feel it in the same room, it's very hard to grasp and to gauge it from, via video. Even though the energy is still there, even though if we go into like a deeper level of understanding, the energy is still transmitting. But because we are not, most of the people are, I would say, they are not um, at the level to accept that the energy is still there and is still transmitting. You don't see it and you don't feel it. It's not the same thing. So it's I would say that to answer your question more specifically, how to manage this difference and how to make sure we bring that beneficial energy back. um, we need to acknowledge in a way that the channels of communicating has changed, and I would say it's also the responsibility of the leader to make sure that they're more they bring their best at the meetings and at working discussions and Zoom calls, and make sure everybody else has their comfort, their constructive comfort zone, and they have everything they need to be able to bring their own best self to every instance of interaction, and somehow recreate the energy that they had, or maybe they never had in the same room at some point, because they might be also new teams assembled, but they need to somehow do like if you will, a routine to bring up that energy all the time and to reconnect to it and bring it back into attention every time they do the meetings and they work together.
I think this is really interesting. I was thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about various moments throughout my career, and especially since we moved here in North America, because before going out as an entrepreneur, I used to work for a technology company, and we were a distributed team. So I was part of a team that had offices in Toronto, in Ottawa, in other parts of Canada, right? So what I can tell you from my own experience is that even though I'm an independent person and I do like to work independently, and I've always had this entrepreneurial style of work. I don't need too many directions. I like to figure out the things that I want to do, and I'm pretty responsible in regards to my responsibilities, if I can say so, if I may say so. What I've noticed is that every time we had an in-person meeting, so after, even though we had online meetings, the weekly meetings, the various meetings that the corporate had us um, assigned to put together, I could feel a strong shift in the energy and in the bond between me and my other colleagues after in-person meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So I think because as a species, we are wired to thrive and to survive in groups, in closed groups. I think regardless of the benefits of working remotely, which we cannot underestimate, right? Having more time to spend with your family, to do other things, to the freedom around um, organizing your agenda. This will, I don't think, from my own experience and talking to other people as well, I don't think that this will replace the strong bond that is created by being in person from time to time. You don't necessarily need to be every day in the office, and that's for
Mm-hmm.
sure. But I think we still need, as a species, we still need, even if we're professionals, we're human beings behind, the titles that we all have and behind the work that we're all doing. We are the human beings that thrived and survived and thrived in closed groups. So I
Mm-hmm.
think this will never change. And regardless of how many tasks we can do, we can plug in our calendars because we are at home, and we can work in our PJs. We don't need to spend time commuting to the office. We don't need, as women, we don't need to spend much time putting too much makeup on or stuff like that, doing our hair to like we would be doing if we were going into the office. Still, this will not replace the human connection that is created by being in person with someone. And I remember being in the office, and I think the most personal and the most connecting conversations were the ones around the water cooler, right? Because
Yeah.
or around the coffee with a coffee mug in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
around the in the kitchen, or so how do we replace that? What do you think about this thing? How do you get, not only as a leader, get your people to, or you connect with your team members personally, but how do you get them to connect at a deeper and personal level so that they feel this bond, so that they feel that there is beyond the professional task, there is a connection at a deeper level that makes people feel that they belong, that they're heard, that they're seen, that they know each other, that they trust each other. Because these are, I think, they are uh, mandatory for a team to be able to move forward, right? Trust is such an important factor in any relationship, especially in work relationships, when you need to, especially if you need to achieve a task and you're relying on someone else. How do you create this deeper bond and this deeper trust level that is required uh, when there's no physical presence? Because whilst, as you mentioned, there are teams that might be in the same city, and they, once a week or once a month, they might be having an activity, going for lunch or coffee together, or a team in the office. How do teams that are distributed in big or vast geographic areas, how do they create, and how do the team leaders go about creating replacing or creating new water cooler moments for their team members?
Yeah. The water cooler moments are part of the team culture that I mentioned before, right? Because, in the past, people were meeting at the water cooler and, just sharing the latest news in the office and gossips, of course. It's always there. And, sharing their feelings. And it's like a timeout from work, right? The water cooler is, you feel like okay, I'm not working at that moment, and you're just, releasing some information and energy and sharing it with the other team members. So,
and some steam maybe if you're upset, right?
what's that?
Releasing some steam also if you're upset,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Some steam as well, of course. So that the water cooler moments are actually an excellent opportunity to release the steam and tension from whatever uh, team members are holding. And to come back to what you were saying, I think it's not a real scenario to go back to what was before. So it's just not. It will never go back to what was before. So we need to move forward and to accept a new reality after the pandemic. And I think we can agree that this will move forward even if the pandemic will completely be over. The way we used to do business and work and meetings before will never be the same again. And this is just the way it is. Like everything changed. People are more comfortable than before and getting more comfortable working from home and not meeting in person. And we just, adaptation is one of the greatest features of human beings. And we have done that before. We went through different other crises as a species. So, and what's happening right now? Yes, we will miss that water cooler moments, how we had it in the past, and we will miss every day coming to the office and you know recreating the team energy in the coffee room or whatever. And but that's just gone. It's not happening anymore. We need to accept that and move forward. And we cannot recreate the same type of energy. Leaders nowadays and teams need to uh, co-create another type of energy because it's just not possible to have the same one. So, and I think that's happening, and it's already happening. We're working with clients who have distributed teams, and we are coaching their teams as they are distributed. And they are working well together, and some of them recently have even very interesting breakthroughs working together. And even, for example, the team that I'm thinking is distributed in US in several states, and they never met. Like they never met. The whole process of integrating that team from the leadership and the two founding partners uh, upwards has been done completely online, right? And their solution, they are selling their solution to the clients completely over the phone and online, and they're never meeting their clients and so on. So and they're working and expanding, and I'm very happy that we are alongside with them to see that. So I would say the new type of leaders, or if you maybe it's not the right word, the old type of leaders, but they just need to pivot towards this is the way we do things, right? This is how the world works right now. And dwelling in the past and being nostalgic about the former water cooler moments and coffee room is just not useful. I mean, it's just not. So they need to pivot toward the new type of energy that they can deploy over the internet, over Zoom calls, over phone calls, because honestly, if you really have it, you can transmit it. And I think the best example of that is movies. The great movies, the great masterpieces, the great acting, uh, legends. They can make you cry by watching a screen, right? They can share that emotion. The greatest actors of all time, they keep you glued when they act. They keep you fascinated. They draw into their stories, and you feel like you're part of the movie. And that's an excellent example that it's possible. But the leaders need to really feel that energy and transmit it via screens. So it is possible, but they need to be authentic and they need to care about their teams. They need to want their teams to feel and grasp that energy and work together. So this is, I think, a way to do it by starting to be real, and keeping it real and sharing that with the team, and let them be real as well. Let them be themselves, and not, they don't have to, um, like be very like dressed up like in the past, maybe, like all the time. And just, as you mentioned, let them be in their PJs if that makes them comfortable, and makes them genuine, and lets them work productively. Whatever works. Like, I think this is the new type of energy that can, not replace, but be, useful and productive, because it's not going to replace it. So that was another era where we just walked into a new one. So I would say this is the how I see it.
And there is also another dimension to this conversation. For us, the older generations, we had the cooler moments,
Hmm.
but we need to acknowledge the fact there is a huge workforce that is created of the young generations. So there are a lot of people who got out the college doors throughout the pandemic, and they've never had the type of work environment, the traditional work environment that we had, right? And there is another aspect to it as well, which is, you mentioned, that there was that top-down approach. The leader of a team was a senior person, senior not only as experience but also as age. There was a certain hierarchy that now changed. There were new leaders who emerged from very young people, right, who are now leading the teams. And among the team members, there are also more senior people than the leaders. So this is also another aspect that we need to take into consideration, that the structure of the teams, the way they work, the leadership changed, and all these things contribute to a, a leader's challenge,
Mm.
actually, when he thinks or she thinks about getting a team towards being a high achiever team. And I think I loved what you mentioned about, because I was a bit scared when you were talking about, actors. I was like, are you asking leaders now to get acting classes? Because I'm not sure about that. So, but the fact that you mentioned that actually they need to be genuine and they need to also show vulnerability is really important, because I think we've seen by now throughout the pandemic that everybody is concerned and everybody has their own pains and suffering. And I think regardless of the professional level and regardless of the company size, we're still figuring out how things are going to be. Nobody has the answers. So I think accepting this and being open to asking your team members' contribution without being afraid that you might look as a leader, it might look like you don't have everything under control, that you know nothing or anything like that. So just to not to use any French words here. And I think this is an important part of leadership, and I love that you brought it up. Being vulnerable and being genuine, leading your teams from a place of open heartedness, if I may say so, in which you show when you don't know how to do things, in which you show that you're also struggling as an individual. It is really important. I think it does help to create this bond and this trust between the team members, which is so important in any relationship, and especially in work relationships. And there was another thing that I think we wanted to talk about, is in regards to the different types of communications, right? Because now we have team meetings via
Hmm.
Zoom and any other platforms, and nobody is there in the same room. You cannot pinpoint who's doing what, and if how is this affecting the energy? And also another question that I would have for you is like, how do you make sure that your team members are accountable, stay accountable for their tasks? So two questions in the end before we log off.
Yeah. So I will start with an excellent point that you just made before that regarding the new generations, and I think the two are very much related. The two ideas, and the excellent point that you mentioned is that a huge proportion of the new task workforce is coming out as we speak, or has in this several in this couple of few years back, and they are still coming up, and for them nothing has changed. For them, this is how it is. It's very important to acknowledge that, especially as a leader. For them, they don't miss the water cooler moments because they never had them in the same way that we did. So for them, this is the way it is. You need to speak their language. You need to talk to them predominantly on digital media because this is what they know. This is how they grew up with. So it's very important. You're not you, as a leader, if you feel like you're lacking something for these people, you're not. You just need to be yourself and let them be themselves because they are used to working or even like living online and consuming digital media and video and going through different live channels and streaming and all that stuff. And that's why I wanted to mention that, because when we mention different types of communication, the water cooler moments are now a Slack channel. This is a new water cooler moment. You can make a Slack channel actually with the name water cooler, like, and team members can go there and share the same type of things that they would in a physical water cooler, right?
And I've actually read about teams doing that. They
Yeah.
recreating the water cooler moment, and I've heard about teams in which members create the commute time so that they have a bit more of a buffer between starting
Yeah.
work and
Yeah.
leaving home.
Yeah. I mean, we have the technical means and skills now to co-create different stuff that are just accustomed to the new way of doing things. Like, and for the new people coming, uh, even the millennials they've been born into a developing predominantly online environment. Not just, I mean, the Z generation, that they are born digital, right? And they're starting now to enter the workforce, the Z generation. So they're the early 20 years olds. They're actually right now the Z, and they're completely digital. For them, it's nothing. For them, it's more awkward to meet in person than to have digital meetings and streaming and all that stuff. So the new way of communication, probably email is a bit still ancient, but still workable, right? But they are working more and more via Slack, and other direct messaging platforms that are coming up. They're streaming. They're streaming, for example, workshops or conferences or stuff like that via different platforms as well. They're zooming a lot. Like, team meetings are Zoom meetings right now. They're, some people even call them, they're not team meetings anymore. They're Zoom meetings. So everything has a digital now has a digital counterpart, I would say, and the new workforce, as you mentioned, is using everything that they have at hand and they're used to do their work. And the accountability is also a matter of how you communicate and delegate what team members needs to be accountable for, and where do you report, the progress and track record and all that. And again, the digital universe puts everything in so many apps and systems that can do that, from the simplest, the Google Suite uh, apps that where you can track everything, from the extensive CRMs where you can do everything and keep track of everything, to even more ERPs for the big companies that do almost everything right now. And to top all that is the new AI, who assisted or exclusively in some areas, who's doing everything. So you, it's a bit scary even, because if before you could say some people were trying to somehow skip accountability or cheated or altering it, right now, because there is this AI who is virtually incorruptible, right? You just can't. I mean, they keep this automatic and enhanced, artificial intelligence algorithms. They keep track of everything. So accountability is kind of, I think it should be better right now if it's well transmitted and if it's well um, um, accepted by team members. There is a better way to keep track of it.
And I think the keywords here are transmitted and accepted. And I think this speaks about direct and open communication, right? One of the
I think there is an audio glitch or something.
It seems to be. It seems to be.
You're speaking like artificial intelligence right now.
So AI heard us.
Oh my god, that's so weird. After I just mentioned AI, you started talking like AI. Oh my god.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm not going to continue talking much because I know how it sounds, and it probably, if it sounds like AI, it's really creepy, actually.
No, now it sounds back again. You're
Okay.
you
Okay.
again.
I'm back. Okay. So I was talking about the two keywords that you mentioned. Making sure that the message is transmitted and received properly, which speaks about direct and open communication, which is
Mm,
one of the skills that actually it is fundamental in any relationship, and it's
yeah.
also fundamental in any team, and it's one of the soft skills I think that leaders need to master these days, especially with distributed teams and with remote work, right?
Mm, yes.
So this is something that you need to invest in as a leader. So in case you're suffering, you feel like there is confusion within your team in regards to who's doing what, and assuming and achieving KPIs, and in terms of not only achieving and achieving KPIs, but also in terms of the clarity of roles and responsibilities and deadlines and everything, make sure that you invest in some trainings that help you improve your direct and open communication skills. And this is one of the skills that in coaching you learn. It's actually not
Mm,
only a skill, it's one of the competencies that they measure you on as a professional coach, right? Because we're both professional coaches, and
mm,
this is something that we train in. So make sure that you as a leader get some coaching skills as well. And I think there is a lot of discussions in the workforce and in the work
mm,
environment about leaders and managers having coaching skills. So I think the conclusion to this today's episode would be, from my perspective, that we need to adapt, right? There's no looking back. I mean, the only reason to look back is to learn and to see how far we've come. And I think that would be the conclusion, that the only way is forward, that we need to adapt, just as we did as a species in throughout our evolution. And that as leaders, we need to improve our soft skills, our communication skills, everything that has to do with the way we engage people as well. I think new tools, we need to learn new tools, we need to learn new ways of engaging our team members. What would be your final words, Gabe, before we end this episode?
Yeah. So I would say, even though everybody's now, as I said, more or less accustomed and used to the new ways of engaging over the digital medium, what we experienced with some of our clients is that sometimes it's useful to bring the team together at least, I would say, once per year. Even if they are very remote and very distributed, you can do something. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but you can mix a 2-3 days, long weekend for the team with an immersive uh, team coaching structure. And we've done that, and there is a big interest in doing that. And if you do that at least once a year, or if the team is closer together, let's say on the same continent at least, you can do it once per quarter. That helps a lot to infuse the team with a different type of energy, even if it's not the same. They are not living in the same city, they are not gathering in the same building every day, but being in close proximity, at least once or per year or per quarter, it helps a lot. So what I would suggest for leadership is, who are watching us, to consider this. Invest in it. Doesn't have to include team coaching, but we would love to be a part of it if you think it's useful for you. But at least get them together. You might do different types of activities, or you might want to do team building or whatever, something else fun. But you could also include team coaching and add a layer of productivity to that meeting. So and yes, what you mentioned as well, Stelusa, the coaching skills for managers and for leaders, they're more and more in demand, and we also work with that to transfer and convert some of the coaching skills we have as professional coaches to managers, so that they can add to their leadership and be more productive, and help their teams be more productive and high performing.
Perfect. And just to let you guys know that we are also working on a course
Mhm.
of coaching skills for young managers and leaders, and we'll let you know as soon as it's out there. Now, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in today. That was it from us, Team X, powered by Rosenthal Coaching. Our topic today was how remote work has permanently modified team dynamics. Feel free to reach out to me and to Gabe via LinkedIn, to follow us here on LinkedIn or on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. If you have any topics or any questions that team related that you want us to address, let us know also. Meanwhile, until next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, stay safe, stay well, and see you next week. Bye,
Take
everyone.
care, everybody. Thank you.